All right, shout out to this guy. He was Crypto Nair D, Darren Lewis Jr. He's Detroit, you the D, new kid on the block. Get smacked back to the Boondocks, right? Shout out to the freaking 2003 movie 8 Mile. All right, so XDC, hybrid blockchain for industry-wide tracking of trade documents. I mean, come on. Trade's always going to get mentioned when it comes to XDC. We know that. And negotiable instruments across parties and platforms. Swift File Act plus XDC Ignio Trace Original. The first doc-compatible document technology vendor to digitize, I should say, trade documents and negotiable instruments as per M-Leader compatible laws. We've done a deep dive on M-Leader for XDC a while back, like 3 months ago. All right, first DOC, right? Remember Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, the DOC. He would have had a great rap career if he didn't get in that accident that messed up his vocal cords. If you guys know your hip hop, you know about that. He had the album, was it Nobody Can Do It Better? Yeah. All right. We're going to play this. It's good stuff. You may have to turn up your volume a little bit. Unfortunately, Twitter doesn't have like an amplifier. I wish I could turn up more. So yeah, you're gonna have to, pay attention about this. No talking in the back row. Pay attention. All right. Here we go.
The perspective, we see that if we combine those interoperable documents using the Enigio technology and using existing systems like Finastra, China System, SureComp, and Swift or e-banking as channel, we see how all of those technologies can be combined. That means Automaxis or any other platform, trade documentation platform, digitizing the documents between the corporates, and then those documents becoming interoperable through the Enigio Trace original technology with various financial institutions. And those financial institutions can themselves exchange those documents through File Act, which is a file transfer service between banks and large corporates, basically. So it shows that each player has a particular role to play. And here we see also how the XDC network provides a public, basically, register of the tokenized assets. I mean, that means there is no business information being published publicly, but there is only a token being a hash, basically, outcome, a result of the asset being published on for validity and life cycle tracking. So you basically can check the life cycle tracking of any asset that you're, for instance, insuring or funding on a continuous basis through the XDC without public blockchain, without being necessarily a client of a particular platform.
What he was going to say at the end is without being a client of a particular platform. I want to show you this just briefly, and then we'll close things out. So here's a little bit of like what he's talking about. And, this comes from xdc.org, it states, let me blow this up more. Security tokens offer a path for investors and SMEs in trade finance. This is what this guy is basically referring to. And I'll come back into the frame just for a brief moment. Try to blow this up just a tad bit more. Make it nice and big. All right. So it says it has been a long established that there is more demand for capital in the multi-trillion-dollar trade finance industry than there is capital available. Now, this is where people get the concept of, for instance, like, I know this is an XDC segment, but can Ripple's XRP take on the debt, our national debt, or other countries that are in debt, taking on the debt? Here's another perfect example of what we're referring to, right? And that is, that demand for capital in the multi-trillion-dollar trade finance industry, then there is capital available. Perfect example. The capital is supplied by the small number of investment banks in this field, which tends to reach only the large, well-established trading firms around the world. Think about what's going on recently. in light of like the SEC and so on, right? How are we going to have an example of, getting that reach to the large, well-established trading firms around the world if we have crypto suppressed consistently? Think about the bigger picture. Are we too far off based on those claims? I don't think so. It says, and the complex system to gain credit with one of these banks is generally out of the reach of the small, medium-sized enterprises, the SMEs. Blockchain, specifically the XDC network, offers a viable platform for creative solutions to this problem. One novel approach would be to create regulated and asset-backed security tokens. The tokens would represent the value of trade finance assets that are packaged in blocks or tranches, not trenches, tranches. A rate of return would be assigned, and ultimately the token would be traded on the secondary market for both institutional and retail investors. Think about that for a moment, right? And what do we know with the launch of ISO 222? We understood that as much as we were thinking that it was going to be, XRP or XLM that was going to have like a pump during that particular day, it is just a messaging system. But what was the one that actually went up like roughly 20% or more? It was XTC. A little bit more in regards to this. There are many regulations with global trade, and industry adoption only occur with well thought out, properly governed tokens. And you're going to see that. And if anything, I know this is not a Jasmine video. I'm going to get into the nitty gritty on the deep dive of why it's so important for more and more of us to understand what DFFT is all about. Data free flow with trust. There's things that are mentioned in regards to the regulatory framework to basically have not just Japan, but other countries, even in the European Union, who are on board to get the ball rolling. With the XDC network security, speed, scalability, low transaction costs, it is, as well as participants' experience in the trade finance industry, a properly structured asset-backed security token grants a new level of participation in trade finance. That's big. I want to just show you this last two things. Trade finance assets are widely considered as low risk. Think about that. This is why XDC, for me personally, consistently is my number 4 of my top 5. Some people ask me that. They're like, why is XDC your number 4 and not HBAR? I love HBAR. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, there's a top 10 for a reason. I'm not necessarily saying that XDC is better than HBAR or any of that stuff. I don't want people to think that. But when I look at the grander scale of things, XDC has to consistently be my number 4 because for me, and again, it's just me, we can agree to disagree. I look at it from this perspective, and that is I'm investing into that generational wealth. I'm not saying that, HBAR is not generational wealth. It is. But I'm also looking at it from the perspective of the institutional investors. When you see things mentioned here, trade finance assets are widely considered as low risk and are therefore attractive to institutional investors. And we're basically getting close to becoming on the path of, wow, what you're going to see on my presentation through a Jasmine video, let's face it, when it comes to data free flow with trust, DFFT, and the regulatory framework that's involved in that, does involve some of the trade sector, right? To have something like this attractive to institutional investors, well, I'm thinking about, the BlackRocks of the world, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing. A security token that represents the value of packaged trade finance assets would make these assets available to a broader investment community, including private and even retail investors. And again, it's just another example of why some people feel as though XDC is like, some people don't like me mention this. I don't care. It's just my opinion. The Ethereum killer, right? With a broader investment pool, the growing 1.7 million trade finance gap, which is higher now, by the way, affects small to medium-sized enterprises. SMEs should begin to shrink. This trade finance gap has been problematic to SMEs who have seen their businesses suffer without access to capital that their larger competitors have long been able to enjoy. All right, I'd like to get down to the example of Strata. We covered that before in the past. But one of my key takeaways I want you guys to have in regards to this is understanding that there's a lot of things going on in the world when it comes to recent developments, or the way crypto's been attacked and so on. What's going on in the background is some of the bigger players that are tied into the institutions or so on are literally laying down some of the framework. But we are, as Coach JV has mentioned, we are actually being distracted. I will agree with that 100%. There is a narrative so many times about what to follow, and we are being distracted. In the past, we were distracted with, for instance, like last year with Do Kwon and so on. Gary Gensler doesn't want us to focus on him as a target. He wants us to focus on something else. There's always going to be things to distract us, but what we should be paying attention is what is going on in the trade sector and so on. And for me, I still will say this 110%, and that is this thing of DFFT, data free flow with trust, is literally the pathway forward when it comes to that regulatory framework that we're all looking for.